3, 2, 1, go! Woo! Oh yeah, now.
Anthony and Orla loves fruits and vegetables.
Hey, Orla, I think Anthony is coming at the Wigglehouse.
Really? Yes, you're right, Opal.
Yeah.
She likes to eat fruits and vegetables, Oxley.
Yeah, you're right, Oswald.
Well, yes.
I'm coming. Won't be long, Orla. Oh, yeah. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Orla.
It's good to see you, Anthony.
Hey, Orla, can we go to the Wiggle House?
Yes. I love the Wigglehouse. So, we better call Clare. Come on, Anthony, let's call Clare right now.
Clare, come over here right
now.
Hello, Anthony. How are you today?
I'm good, Clare.
Well, yes.
Come on, Orla and Clare, let's get into the big red car.
Yay. Hey, Clare and Anthony, I was thinking about fruit salad.
Really? Yes, you do think about fruit salad.
Yes.
Orla, can you think about fruit salad?
Of course, I can. Hello. My name is Orla. Do you like fruit salad? Yes, you do like fruit salad. There are apples, bananas, grapes and watermelon. Now, let's eat some fruit salad. Yeah. Wow. That was great thinking about fruit salad, Clare and Anthony.
Yes. That's great thinking, Orla.
Yeah.
Look, Orla and Clare, we're here.
At the Wiggles house. I spy with my little eye, something beginning with P.
Pablo.
Yes. That's right, Tasha. It's Pablo.
That would be Orla, Clare, and Anthony.
Hello,
Wiggles, Backyardigans and Emma.
Hello, Orla, Clare,
and Anthony.
It's lovely to see you, Wiggles, Backyardigans and Emma.
Hey, I know. Let's go for a picnic at the park, guys.
Yay!
We love picnic.
We love picnic.
All right. Let's go.
When everybody got to the park. Apple is so yummy, Pablo, Tyrone, Uniqua, Tasha, and Austin.
Yes, we do, Orla.
Wow. This is the best picnic in the world.
Yes. That's right.
Me too.
Me 3.
And me 4.
Wow. This hamburger is so delicious, Wiggles and Emma.
Yes, we would, Claire.
Are you excited, Wiggles and Emma?
Yes, we're always excited. This is cool.
Me too.
Me 3. Me 4.
And me 5 as well.
Hang on, guys. Where's Foodman?
I don't know, Orla.
Well, very strange, Clare. Anyways, let's start eating, guys. After everybody has eaten their food. Wow. That was fun eating the food at the park.
Yes, that was fun, Orla.
Yeah.
Hello, citizens. I'm Foodman the Superhero.
It's Foodman the Superhero.
So, how is the picnic, Wiggles, Emma, and Clare?
Very good, Foodman.
Well, that's fantastic. And what about you, Backyardigans and Orla?
We like it, Foodman.
Well, that's great.
Hey, Foodman, why don't we sing a song about fruit salad?
Yes. That's a great idea, Orla.
Come on, guys, let's dance and sing.
All right, guys, let's sing fruit salad together. Here we go.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Here we go now. Woohoo! Uh-huh. Here we go now.
Let's sing, let us sing, fresh fruit and veggies. Here we go. Time for fruit shop singing, everybody.
Aww. Woo! Aww. Aww. Woo!
Look, guys, it's the OSMU Wiggles and Larissa. Time to go home right now, Orla and Clare.
Oh, yes, we do, Larissa.
And where did you go, guys?
We went to the park with the Wiggles, Foodman, Backyardigans, and Emma.
Wow. I like it, Orla.
What are you eating at the park, guys?
We eat some food on the picnic.
Cool. I like it, Claire.
And what are you singing, guys?
We sing fruit salad and let us sing at the park.
Wow. I love it. That's good, Orla.
That's right, Opal. Well, it's time for us to go now.
Goodbye,
everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.